Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspiring Moments with Kaylin radio show. I am your host, Kaylin Jean Louis, and I'm thrilled to have you join me today for another motivational show. For those listening, you are listening to a show that aims to inspire you to discover and become the best version of yourself. And sometimes on the show, I'm able to talk about some of the things in the community that I feel like are really making an impact and making a difference. And before I go into that, I always encourage you to download the Hallelujah 95.3 app so that you can listen to this show on the go, whether you're in your car, at work, or just taking a moment for yourself. And be sure to tag a friend or a loved one to tune in right now because today's show is truly one that I believe many of us are excited to hear. I'm talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. Like I said earlier, there's sometimes things that go on in the community that I feel like deserve just a extra level of a push. And November is National Family Caregivers Month. During this time, the world pauses to recognize and support the incredible people who care for their loved ones every single day. And this month hits close to home for me because my mom and I are caregivers for my grandmother who has Alzheimer's, which I often talk about on the show. But it is a disease that has touched my family for generations and turned many of us into caregivers. And so that's why it's so encouraging to see organizations right here in our community taking time to honor those who give so much of themselves. The Dementia Care and Cure Initiative, or DCCI, is doing just that through their Hearts of Care, Hands of Thanks Caregiver Celebration, which is happening at the Chattahoochee Southside Senior Center on November 20th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And this event is all about showing appreciation, offering support, and reminding caregivers that their work truly does make a difference. Joining me today is Whitney Scott, a registered clinical social worker intern at the TMH Memory Disorder Clinic and a member of DCCI. She's here to share more about this special event, the importance of supporting caregivers, and how our community can get involved. But before she comes in, I love to give all my guests a proper introduction. And so Whitney Scott is the Memory Disorder Clinic Coordinator at Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare in Tallahassee, Florida. She graduated with the Bachelor's of Social Work degree from Florida A&M University in 2022 and a Master's Social Work degree from Florida State University in 2023. She is currently pursuing her license in clinical social work, and Whitney values her role as a social worker and overseeing the Memory Disorder Clinic. Whitney says that the most rewarding part of being a social worker is providing support to caregivers and families impacted by dementia. Whitney educates caregivers on the importance of preventing burnout, how to practice self care while caregiving, and providing caregivers with community resources that can help lessen caregiving challenges. In her spare time, Whitney is actively involved with her church, Family Worship and Praise Center, reading, exercising, and spending quality time with her son, Aston. Welcome to the show, Whitney, and thank you for being on.
Hi, Kaylin. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor. Thank you for creating this space for caregivers and family members to learn what's happening in the community and to find ways to receive support. So, thank you.
Of course. Now, as we get into the topic of today is Hearts of Care, Hands of Thanks, honoring our caregivers, which is, of course, the entire theme of the celebration. And so, can you tell the audience a little bit more about what the Dementia Care and Cure Initiative is and what inspired this year's celebration?
Yes, so the Dementia Care and Cure Initiative Task Force of the Big Bend is a part of the Alzheimer's Disease Initiative through the Department of Elder Affairs with the state of Florida. And so the goal of the DCCI task force is to create dementia-friendly communities around the state of Florida. That includes education, awareness, making sure that organizations, businesses, community members are aware of dementia, people with dementia, and how to better support one another. And with that, going towards the caregivers is that we want to make sure that we create a space for our caregivers as well so that they feel comfortable taking their loved one with them to the coffee shop to get a cup of coffee and that they know that the business owner will know that their loved one has dementia and may need more support and more assistance. So our goal is really to make sure that we inform the community. And by informing the community and education and awareness, we're also supporting our caregivers. With the Hearts of Care, Hands of Thanks honoring our caregivers event happening next Thursday. November is National Family Caregivers Month, And we really wanted to take that space to acknowledge and celebrate our caregivers. You, like you said, you have a personal experience with being a caregiver. And I've never been a caregiver, but I have been told of what I've seen through my lens is that it can be challenging. It can be hard. And during those moments, you may not have time to give yourself grace or have time to acknowledge yourself. So it was really important that we decide, like, let's do something we actually have always wanted to do. But working with the Gaston County Department of Elderly Affairs was like, hey, why not? November is the best time to do that. And also, this is opportunity for all caregivers. So, whether you're caring for somebody who's recovering from a stroke or heart failure, like, this is open to all caregivers. So, I'm really excited about this event, and I'm really excited to see what this will do to uplift our caregivers.
I'm excited to see the impact of it as well. I mean, it is really important. I know, especially for those I know, that appreciation or giving appreciation to caregivers is not something that often happens because, a lot of times people tend to focus on the person they're caring for rather
Yeah,
than the person who's giving the care. And so I think it's so important that we as a community continue to uplift that because one, there's already enough going on in the world, and then when you add caregiving on top of that, life can become a lot. It tends to be just very strenuous, and so when they're able to get that level of support, that level of appreciation, it does give them a greater push to go harder. And so when we talk about the caregivers and families that will attend, what can they expect when they attend the event on November 20th?
absolutely. So just to kind of get a summarization of the event, there will be opportunity for caregivers to visit some of the vendor tables, which will have local resources, community information, knowing what's available. And there will also be opportunity for them to sit in on a panel discussion where different guest speakers will talk about topics related to caregiving, how to manage your caregiving experience, know what resources are available as well. But to me, I think the biggest part that I really find satisfying is knowing that caregivers have had the opportunity to share their stories, opportunity to connect with one another, and they have that space for them. So it's definitely going to be a lot of love, connection, warmth, and knowing that you have a community that's rallying for you and that you are going to walk into a space that you can know that this space is for me and this is what I'm doing for myself. And so really wanted to emphasize that attending this event is also a form of self-care, prioritizing self-care, something that I'm really huge on in the clinic is finding the little things to do to put yourself as a caregiver, to put yourself first for a moment. And so I'm really excited. I hope that the caregivers, when they leave that event, they can leave with a little bit weight off their shoulders. Not, I know still may be heavy, but they know that with that weight, there comes support that they have with them moving forward.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know you mentioned earlier, of course, that you've not been in my situation caregiving, but I mean, you work closely with caregivers and individuals, especially living with memory disorders, like you said at TMH. And so, what have you learned about the emotional and physical toll caregiving can take?
Whew, it's a lot. I have had caregivers break down in tears in my arms. I have had caregivers tell me that they just don't know they can do it anymore. I've had caregivers get to a point where they've neglected their own health and they ended up needing to be caregivers. And so I have definitely seen the emotional toll of what it does when you do not have the resources or you do not have the support from family members or you do not know what's available and something that unfortunately we're being transparent, there's the financial strain that comes along with caregiving. Some caregivers are what we call the sandwich generation. Some of them are caring for their young children and their parents or other adults, or some caregivers are still working. Some caregivers have had to quit their jobs in order to be a full-time caregiver. So a lot of those factors have definitely been a huge toll on most of the caregivers that I interact with here at the clinic. So what my goal is to see what can we do to help with managing the stressors and the challenges that come with caregiving, whether that's inviting them to one of the support groups that I facilitate, whether that's providing them with access to your mom's podcast. There's some YouTubers that I refer. Um, Also, maybe attending an event like this, but finding ways to help manage the emotional challenges, finding ways to help maybe connect them with resources in the community like, hey, the Alzheimer's Project has a 4-day respite site. Take advantage of what we can help with. But I definitely can say my role as the coordinator, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough. And sometimes I feel like that I feel helpless in some situations because I want to solve the problem. I want their loved one to wake up dementia free and their life back to normal. And I know I can't. So, what I try to do is I try to make the best of what we have by providing my 100% support and dedication to their journey.
That is so powerful. And I just want you to know that I feel like you're doing enough. I don't think any caregiver or any person who honestly supports caregivers will ever feel like they're doing enough or will ever feel like their work is gonna, solve all the issues. Because at the end of the day, caregiving is hard. I mean, I will say, of course, in the last few years of being in college, my mom has had more of the brunt end of caring for my grandmother, or me just witnessing just other people that I've met. But it does take a toll. And I don't know that people 100%, those who aren't in that situation, understand that. And that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this on the radio show, because we're coming up on the seasonal holiday time of the year. This is the time of the year where it's hard for people in general, because people endure seasonal depression. They endure those things where they're missing family members. They're in a point where their minds are at an all-time
Hmm.
everywhere, all-time high. And so, especially when you add caregiving to that, that can be hard. It can be
Yeah.
hard to grapple with the fact that you don't have the opportunities to do holidays the way family members or friends get to. And so when you even when you're in the situation, like you said, where you feel like you don't always feel like you're able to give your best, what keeps you motivated to continue advocating for caregivers and raising awareness about dementia care, even when you're seeing these instances where caregiving is very hard?
I love this question. Every time I'm asked, I have to make sure I don't go on a full like 30-minute spiel. But I truly love what I do, Caitlin. I truly love being a social worker. I truly love working with the memory disorder clinic, and I truly love advocating for families and caregivers. Last week, I spoke at a summit with Florida State and AARP, which was their caregiver summit, and I had the opportunity to voice the frustration, concerns that were voiced to me from the caregivers I interact with, an opportunity to tell the people who are in charge of making policies, putting laws or bills or funding into place to help caregivers, to tell them I'm doing the boots on the ground work, and I'm hearing the stories, I'm hearing the frustration, I'm hearing the challenges. And what keeps me motivated is knowing that I can be that middleman. I can be that advocate for my caregivers. I can be that one that can be their voice when they feel like they've given all they have. I can be the one to put my boots on the ground and rally for them. I can be the one to make sure that, okay, you haven't received a call back from this agency. Let me call them. Let me call them and check on that referral. Or you're having a hard time finding respite in your areas. Okay, well, let me call this person, this person, this person. But I love what I do. And what keeps me motivated is knowing, well, one thing is that I know that I'm 35, but I won't be 35 forever. I will get older. I will become an older adult. And the challenges that are being presented that I'm seeing right now could impact me or my mother or my parents. So I'm always keep in mind that everything that I'm doing right now is making an impact, not just on my professional, but maybe one day in my personal life. And so I can go on and on and on, Caitlin, but I'm so passionate about this, about working with families and individuals impacted by dementia and being their advocate and being their voice and doing everything I can in my power to make sure that they know that they have support from my clinic, my team, And like I say, if I could wake up tomorrow with a cure for dementia, that would be the best thing in the world. But what I can do is they can know that they have an ally in me, they have an advocate, they have a friend, they have a supporter, they have a counselor, they have everything that they can get from my clinic and my team and I. They can get that for me. So yes, I can go on and on and on. I'm so passionate. I have no other interest in working in any other field but this.
And I just have to say thank you for being able to work in this field, because I want to tell the audience, I know that not everybody is a caregiver. Not everybody is willing to accept, that great challenge and that great role. But advocates, whether you know somebody who has Alzheimer's, whether you know somebody who's dealing with a chronic illness, whether you know somebody who's helping somebody recover from a stroke, whether you know somebody who's caring for a sibling or a loved one that may have, a mental disorder, it is so important to have advocates that are not just dealing with the current challenge of being a caregiver, but are outside of it and can witness the different things that caregivers are going through and being able to communicate that on their behalf. That's why me and my mom, every year they have the Alzheimer's rally and tally. We all end up going for the Alzheimer's rally and tally to be able to advocate and speak with legislators. And people don't realize the huge importance that does, because yes, our legislators know the minute challenges that people deal with, but when they're able to really hear personal stories, really understand what people are going through in real time, it does make a difference. And so I just put that plug in there because I encourage those, even if you don't know somebody, even if you aren't caring for somebody who's dealing with a disease, but you do know somebody who's dealing with it, or you are passionate about advocating for people, get involved in the various organizations that are around in Tallahassee. I mean, if you know somebody with Alzheimer's, you got the Alzheimer's Association or the Alzheimer's Project. If you're dealing with somebody right here with the Dementia, Care and Cure Initiative, and you want to be able to get involved with that, or it's something completely different. There's so many different groups in Tallahassee that you can be able to advocate for. But, I'm going to get off that plug and I come back in.
No, I agree with you. And the DCCI task force is open to anybody. Anybody can join. Any community member can join. It's open to everybody. And I want to also add, I just found out, you and your mom may know, but the Alzheimer's Rally for Tally, they released the dates will be January 26th and January 27th of 2026. So if anybody who's listening and is interested in advocating with us for the Rally for Tally at the Capitol, it will be January 26th and January 27th of 2026. And I believe there's more information, at the Alzheimer's Association Florida website about that date and details.
Yes, yes. And I definitely will try to get a preview of that for those listening, because every year, y'all know I typically talk about that. That's something I'm really passionate about and I want people to be involved with. But going back into the conversation, when you think about, people who may be listening and they may be wondering, okay, well, you're telling us all these things of how we can get involved, but we may not understand how to show appreciation to caregivers, especially not just in November. Because I say this about every national month, just even when it comes to Black History Month, we not just Black everywhere, we Black everywhere. Caregivers are not just caregivers in November, they're caregivers 365. And so how can friends, family, and communities do a better job of showing appreciation for caregivers, not just during November, but all year round?
I think what I have been told, what caregivers have told me, what makes it easier is saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" Asking somebody how they're doing. Is there something that I can do for you? Is there something that I can do to make it snow? Can I pick up, take your clothes to the dry cleaner? Or maybe I can come sit with your mom or dad for an hour or two, or just really truthfully, some people just need somebody to listen to them. So finding ways in the small things to provide support to your loved ones, to your caregivers that you know, can make a huge difference simply by asking them how is their day going. Is there anything that you can do to support them? What do they need from you? Just being intentional and showing up is to me like the the biggest key factor in supporting caregivers and caregivers feeling like their challenges are being acknowledged by the people in their circle.
Thank you for sharing that. I also would say, if you will are willing to, roll up your shoulders for the day and
Hmm.
watch their loved one, that helps. I
That's
mean,
a huge
you
one.
know,
Yes.
like I said, my mom's primary caregiver for my grandmother, but sometimes if she just needs to take a nap, I'm able to come over just to give her some relief, for an hour or two. Or we have different people who come and regularly, come to sit with my grandmother. But, stuff like that, sitting with their loved one. Or, if you have people who that they're going to have to feed their loved one, but they may not always feel like cooking, drop off a meal, drop off
Yes.
some groceries, help in that way. It really does go a long way because it
Hmm.
not only makes them feel a sense of relief because they don't have another thing on their checklist to do, but it makes them feel like you care about them and that you
Yes.
genuinely want them to have a more smooth transition with their day. You want them to be able to continue pushing forward. I mean, like I said, caregiving is not easy. And
Hmm.
I often say, God's strongest soldiers end up ending up in that position. He carries them through. But even when we talk about that, what do you feel like is a message or some encouragement you would like to share with caregivers who may be listening right now and feel overwhelmed or just unseen?
Something I always tell my caregivers is to give yourself grace. Know that you are doing the best that you can. Know that your best is good enough. Know that you have a community of support here right in little old Tallahassee. And if you don't live in Tallahassee, I can find some support for you. But know that you are doing the best that you can. Know that your best is good enough and give yourself grace. I'm a huge fan of grace. Give yourself grace. Know that you are doing the best that you can and that your best is good enough. I always say I'm Kaylin, my information for the Memory Disorder Clinic. I don't mind sharing that with you. My my line is open if you need to call, if you need to vent, if you just want to tell me something, a funny moment that you thought about and you didn't have anybody else to share it with, that's what I'm here for. So know that my role as the Memory Disorder Clinic coordinator goes beyond my profession. It's a passion, and I see you, I validate you, and I'm here for you. But give yourself grace. Know that you are doing the best that you can, and your best is good enough.
That's good, y'all. I also would add on and say, know that every day is going to be different. And some days will be more challenging than others. On some days, you may wake up and be questioning, why am I here? Why am I, caregiving? But in the end, number one, you know that your loved one would greatly appreciate you for doing this. They love you and they appreciate you, even if they can't tell you straight away. But also know that you will have easier days where it's not as hard, the hassle is not as tough. You'll wake up with a little bit more energy than you had the other day. And to keep pushing forward, I mean, I'm gonna put this shameless plug in there. If you need resources, there are several resources, and I'm gonna shout out my mom like I typically do because she did release a book that is Hey Caregiver. It is a devotional and prayer journal. It is okay to write out your thoughts. It is okay to be able to use your spiritual life to push you through caregiving, because if you are a believer in Christ, and it's going to be hard, but being able to pray and ask God for strength, being able to write down your not so happy moments while caregiving so that you can get them out your mind and you can focus more so on the present is really big. And look at the different resources that are listed. Do you have any resources that you want to share with me that caregivers can look to?
Yes, so actually, I will be working with Acts 2, which is an organization dedicated to African American caregivers. We are hosting a free Facebook Live workshop on December 4th at 7 p.m. You can find Acts 2 on Facebook or their YouTube. But I will be joining their organization to talk about how to create dementia friendly holidays during the holiday season. So if you're caring for a loved one with dementia, your holidays are going to be a little bit challenging and a little bit different. Doesn't mean that it can't be meaningful, but there may be room for adjustment. So, Kaylin, I will give you that information. Um, I'll send you the link with a flyer, but it will be December 4th at 7 p.m. and it will be free. and it will be via Facebook Live, Facebook or their YouTube page, but it will be live. Oh, there you go. There you go. And also just the Memory Disorder Clinic at TMH. You do not have to be a patient to receive our social work services. So our services are free to the community, and if you are caring for a loved one with dementia and you need information on about finding resources in the community, please call our number at 850-431-5001 and press option 7 for social work line. That will connect to our phone line, and one of the social work team members can assist you. But our services are free, which means our ability to provide resources and support is free.
Thank you for sharing those resources. And, of course, if I end up seeing anything, I will, share it with the audience, and we'll continue to make sure people feel that way or feel that they can have some things to, fall back on and people to reach out to. But the last question that I will ask you is that if you could change one thing about how society views or supports caregivers, what would it be?
To me, I'm thinking about policy. um, I'm thinking just I really wish that a lot of the insurance companies and a lot of the policies in place would be more thoughtful of what how challenging it can be for caregivers, and the strain, the emotional, physical, emotional, mental strain that caregiving could be. And so for me, if I could change one thing, it would definitely be to have better policies in place, to support caregivers. It would definitely be to have more funding to create more resources, more availability for caregivers, because at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that we run into is that for example, Meals on Wheels is going through a crisis right now where there's a huge backlog of people waiting for Meals on Wheels, but there's no funding. So to me, if I could change one thing, it would be to improve policies and make policies more caregiver friendly and to better support caregivers and their loved ones.
Yes, we need policy reform really badly. I personally would love to change, I know our healthcare system is flooded with so many issues in America, but I definitely want to always push that, those who are working in the hospitals, our nurses, our doctors, different things, are able to still see those dealing with Alzheimer's, as human. I mean, to humanize their situations, but not even that, to really see their caregivers as advocates, because this is a conversation for another show. But I've definitely had times of even being with my grandmother in the hospital and having to consistently remind them, hey, she cannot answer you. She cannot give you what the answers that you need, or different things like that, and really having them look at us as their advocates and who will be able to better advocate for the things that they need. But thank you so much, Whitney, for being a part of the show, for sharing more about this initiative. Everybody, please remember that the Dementia Care and Cure Initiative, or aka DCCI, is doing their Hearts of Care, Hands of Thanks Caregiver Celebration that's happening at the Chattahoochee Southside Senior Center on November 20th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Please come out. They have several different partners that are going to be involved, but this is truly going to be a great event for the community to be able to learn some new things and to be able for our caregivers to really get that support that they need. So thank you so much, Whitney.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, can you share different ways that people can connect with you before we get or wrap up the show?
Yes, so I can be found on LinkedIn. Um, Whitney Scott. I can be found on LinkedIn. You can also go to tmh.org/memory. So tmh.org memory. You can find my information as well as information to my colleagues. And you can also reach me at whitney.scott@tmh.org.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And everybody, before I leave, you can connect with me on my social media platforms, which are subscribing to the YouTube channel, which is KCK Inspiring Moments with Kaylin, and turning on your post notifications. You can follow me on Instagram at Kaylin Cares 15 and on Facebook at Kaylin's Caring Connection. And as I always do when I wrap up the show, I want you to remember one thing. You are loved, you are enough, and
Yes.
you matter. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next KCK Inspiring Moments with Kaylin show. Until next time, be blessed.
Be blessed.